All right, hi Blake. So here's what we're going to have you do with your research paper. And I know you said you were having some trouble with the outline too. I'm looking at your grid right now, and I added something onto your question. I added a comment over here that might help you when you're organizing your information. And then also over here, the only thing you were really missing from your gathering grid is you've got to have some kind of information from your book. You're in luck because there's an index in your book, so you can actually go and look in the back of the book to find out where things are about stairs and emergency exits and what else could you look for? You could look for evacuation, you could look for drills, you could look for precautions, like you've got, as a word in your actual question and stuff like that. See what you can find, and then try to have at least 4 or 5 different pieces of information from your book that you'll tie in then to your outline and then ultimately to your paper. But you've got fireproofing critical. Um, so talking about that, that's a good thing. A vertical path to safety. And I don't know if this is talking about the trade center in particular or just office buildings in general. And it'd be interesting to know what year this is coming from. Challenge the nation, the World Trade Center. Okay, this actually sounds like it could be really helpful to you. And then the building and fire safety, World Trade Center. Okay, and you might want a couple more facts from that too. But you've got a decent grid going here, which is good. So what you're going to want to do for an outline, and I've walked a few students through these, and I'll show you an example. What you're going to want to do is set up a doc where you have your title, you have your thesis, you've got your main points, which is your Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 2, and then you might have 3 main ideas, you might have 4, you might have 5. This student only had 2, and that was actually okay because hers is more of a cause and effect. If you look at this one has title, thesis, and then we've got Roman numeral 1, and this one's talking about Hiroshima. And then we've got Roman numeral 2, which is the second main idea, and then the third main idea. What you need to think to yourself is, how do I organize my information to make sure that I'm answering my question fully? How am I addressing this topic? So what I would suggest you do is that you go into Docs or Drive and you create a new doc, just blank. I'm sorry, my computer's super old. Here we go. All right. So you're going to have your title. You're going to leave a space for your thesis. I would do that last, those 2 things last. And then you're going to have your Roman numeral 1. And your Roman numeral 1 is not your introduction. Your introduction is basically your thesis statement and then talking generally about your topic. So the idea of safety in high-rise buildings and how important it is. And then maybe just like a little bit about the World Trade Center too. And then leading down to your thesis. That's your introduction. Okay? So for Roman numeral 1, for something like yours, for a topic like yours, I would think that you would want to talk a little bit about the background on the Twin Towers. Okay? And then, so you might want to talk a little bit about the architect, perhaps, just like very brief. And then you might also want to talk about something like, you might want to talk about the choices made. And it talks about that in your book. So choices made with stairs, with, with elevators, with emergency protocols and systems, etc. Okay? So just to give a little bit of background on that. Then for Roman numeral 2, you're going to decide what's my next main idea. Based on my topic and based on the question that I've got, what is something that I need to make sure to talk about? So in your case, it might be something like, and let me go back and take a look here. So if I'm looking through your ideas over here and you want to read through your notes on the side and go, what is this really all saying? What are some of the main things that my information seems to suggest? Okay, so you're going to have to figure that out looking at your information. And if you start to go, oh, I'm not sure what my information really suggests, it really is only saying one thing, that might tell you, whoops, I didn't find enough information. I got to go back and find a little more. Okay? So that is basically how you set up your outline. You want to have your main ideas as your Roman numerals, and then you want to have your A's and B's as, these usually represent paragraphs, by the way. The letters, not the Roman numeral itself. The Roman numeral is suggestive of a handful of paragraphs that seek to answer that main idea. Okay? So let's just make something up here. Let's imagine, like, for yours, again, background on the Twin Towers. Then I might want to do something on the day of. Something like failures and successes. Okay? So I might talk about the fact that elevators. I remember in the book it was talking about the elevators where you had lots of people trapped. You also had some issues with just it seemed like there were different landings and levels and whatever. So you'll decide, okay, so what else do you need to say here? Maybe. And then you might talk about the stairs. And then you might say, okay, well, there were only a few were accessible. Then you might talk about the firefighters using the stairs. Whatever it is that you think you should talk about. And then you might want to talk about the fact that the roof exits, that was a big deal, that those were also blocked and inaccessible. All right, or they were locked. And then you might go on and say, okay, well, so what am I going to talk about next? Do I want to talk about the overall, what should have been in place? And that's kind of like, in hindsight, looking back at these reports on safety and stuff like that, what exactly should they have done? So this is one way that you could set it up. There are other ways that you could set up your information too. It's just you've got to decide, what are those main things that I want to say based on the information that I found? And then, looking back at all of this information here, what does that seem to suggest? That is your thesis statement. What does the information below seem to suggest? Of course, this is a research paper, so none of it is going to be in first person. You're going to state your findings as fact, right? With no I in there. And then you'll go ahead and title it something that relates to the topic overall, that gives a strong suggestion of what the reader will encounter in your paper. All right, so I'm going to share this doc with you so that you can actually edit in here if you wish. Something like that. So there you go. So you can edit this document if you wish and just add stuff to it. If you'll notice here, if we're looking at Connors, he has quite a few things that he's going to be talking about now, right? And even though his is double-spaced, mostly the outlines have been one page, single-spaced, but a full page. And as you can see with Lily's here, she has a lot of things that she's got to talk about. And these, what we've got is A here and B. In her case, those are not going to be paragraphs. Her paragraphs are going to be her little a, probably, and her little b, and so on. If you want to see any outline examples, you can also look at mine that I've got posted in Classroom. So if you scroll up a little bit, I've also got something on how to do a works cited page, which is kind of helpful, I hope. But here, if you look at outline stuff, outline construction resource, you can click on my example. And so here's one on Rocky Flats that I did based on my research on that topic. So you can see that I followed the exact same process that I just walked you through. I did not write the thesis or title first. I went ahead and said, what are the main things that I've discovered based on my information? Okay, what are the things that I need to talk about in order to do this logically, where my reader is able to follow and understand everything that I learned about it? Okay, now from here, I wound up starting my paper as well to see what it was like. And I actually wound up switching A and B. I started out talking about Candelas rather than talking about the wildlife refuge. Now this part here, Candelas, just that part there, just B, wound up being super huge for me because I had a whole lot of information that I felt it was important to share. By the way, when your outline's done, you're going to attach it here, but I'd also like you to email me and let me know so that I can go ahead and take out any missings or whatever. This is your research paper workspace, so you will open this up and start writing your paper in here, but you need to bring a print copy with you on Tuesday. Tuesday's when it's supposed to be due. Let's see, oh, here we go. Here's my research paper example, and then also an MLA sheet if you need to look at that. So you can use this to kind of observe what is it that I'm doing here in a research paper in order to get this done. I've got my title, I've got my introduction. I will tell you my introduction is ridiculously long, so it's not a great model for that because it went on to a second page. Okay? So, and all of this is kind of leading into my thesis statement. Okay? Anyway, then here is where I start talking about Candelas. So this is, if you look at my outline, it's this right here, okay? But for me, I had a lot of information. I'm using in-text citations to show where information came from. So this came from an article called Building Lots. And then this came from another article. Now notice I was inconsistent because I've got NP here for no page, but I don't have it here, which if I'm going to use NP, I have to use it consistently through the paper. Then I've got, you know, where it's located, that kind of stuff. I actually went up there to visit. This is from a brochure. Again, I've got to be consistent. Either put the NP in or don't. And then I've got a woman that I interviewed here, which is why my name is here, okay, because I was the interviewer, and so on. Here's another source that I used. So this was a newspaper article with an author of Biggs, but it was online, so it's NP. This was from another brochure, so I should add NP there. Whoops. Okay, and so on. So if you notice, in each paragraph, it's not as though I'm going, oh, here's one source in paragraph 1 and here's my second source in paragraph 2. All of this information is getting synthesized or kind of mixed in and combined together in order to really answer each part of my question. And then finally, one last thing I want to point out to you. It's super important that you create a works cited page. So you can see here I've got all my entries. I have a hanging indent and all of that. And yeah, they're all alphabetized. You got to reflect all 5 of your sources. I had a few extras because I picked up some brochures and stuff like that. My recommendation to you is to use EasyBib. For EasyBib, you can go to database if you wish, and then you can go ahead and create all of your entries. What kind of database are you citing and so on. Or if you notice on the bottom of any of these articles in the databases, if you go back to your links that you put in your grid, there's the source citation right there, which is super easy to cut and paste and then just make a couple of modifications, okay? If you have any issues with anything, I want you to email me and let me know. I'd be happy to try to help you out. I'm sorry this video is a day late for you. Yeah, but just keep me posted on how it's going. All right, well, I hope you're feeling better.